It's time for Watts on Wealth Radio with Barry Watts and your host, Amy Sharp.
Welcome on into Watts on Wealth. I'm Amy Sharp, happy to be sitting alongside the retirement designer and tax strategist here, the leader of Wealthcare Corporation, Barry Watts. And we've got a great show for you today. I think we're going to have a little fun here at the beginning of this show today. For some of you who maybe haven't been listening as long as others, we know we have regulars every week, but maybe you don't know everything you think you know about Barry Watts. And it's always fun to ask some questions. You know I have questions today, Barry. So
I don't know, Amy. They may not want to know.
Be prepared. Oh, they want to know.
What you don't know won't hurt you sometimes.
They want to know. I feel it. I can feel it in my bones. Let me share the number with you, because as we go through the show today, we're going to get just beyond getting to know Barry as well. We're going to get into some topics relating to retirement. And of course, those questions up front are all why he does what he does every single day as well. But we want you to have this number. So when you feel the time is right, or if you have questions following up to anything we cover on the show today, you can reach out to the team here at Wealthcare Corporation and start talking with them about a plan for your retirement. That's really where it all begins, is getting that foundation. And it begins with this number. You can text the word visit to this number as well, 417-200-3500, 417-200-3500. Are you nervous, Barry? Are you nervous about the questions I'm going to throw at you? I feel like you're kind of giving me that look like, I don't know.
Oh, well, I've been in a lot of predicaments, and I don't really think this is one that's going to get the best of me. So, Amy, I'm trying to remember the last time I was nervous.
Oh, I can sense that. Yeah, that probably doesn't happen very often.
It might have been in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I haven't been nervous in a while.
Well,
so no, I'm not nervous. I love people. I love you. I love working with you. We're going to have a great time. Whatever you want to know, I'm happy to share. If you're not careful, I may share something I shouldn't have or that you didn't want to know, but I'll try to.
I'm glad you feel that.
Try to keep it all G-rated.
I'm so glad you feel that way. I just think every once in a while when we get together on this show, we tend to talk about a lot of heavy things each week that are going on, whether it's government related, market volatility, whatever it may be, taxes. But I want to give our listeners a little better sense of who you are and why you do what you do. And I know we weave that into shows from time to time, but I think it's always good to kind of really understand who's obviously behind the microphone talking, and then as you come in to visit with the team here and meet Barry, his other advisors as well, you have a better understanding of why you do this. And so I thought we just, basic question, kind of give us a little bit of your background, how you got involved in financial services.
Oh, well, I was going to start with, I was born a poor white child.
Well, we don't have enough hours for that, but if you...
how I got started in financial services. Well, there's several layers to that story. I mean, I've always been in the people helping business. Mm-hmm. And interestingly enough, I spent about the first 10 years of my career as a minister, a pastor in a local church.
Yeah.
And you have a lot of things that come land on your desk, so to speak, when you're in that role. And I was young and probably ill-equipped to handle a lot of it. But, a lot of couples in crisis. And many times those couple crises had to do with finances and not enough and not handling properly. This was long before Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University existed.
Sure.
And so I was accustomed to seeing people with difficulty. And eventually, sort of what happened is I wound up leaving the pastorate to go into the for-profit world. And a lot of my colleagues, my classmates, when I was at the University of Missouri, had gone to work for a guy named Ted. Ted lived over in Fulton. We were in Columbia at the university, which gives me the opportunity to diss you folks who are in Husker land, but that's another topic.
It's a whole other day show. This is about you, remember. It's about you, not me.
So anyway, Ted used to come over, and he particularly liked to talk to students in the College of Agriculture.
Okay.
Particularly the agribusiness or agricultural economics area. Now, this guy named Ted, his last name was Jones. His actual name was Edward D. Jones Jr.
Okay.
And so Ted recruited a lot of my colleagues right out of college, and I went a different way for about 10 years. But when the time came for me to leave ministry and go into a different line of work, it was most natural for me to go to to my buddies and say, hey, I kind of like what you do, I think. And I want to know what to do. And I called one of them, actually a guy by the name of John Brownfield, whose daddy was Derry Brownfield of the Brownfield Farm Network.
Okay.
And that's it. So there'll be people in parts of our northern parts of our listening area
will know that name.
Who will know the Brownfield Farm Network. Certainly, it's still out there today, recording ag news and putting it out. Anyway, John said, no problem, we'll have you a job tomorrow. And I had a job tomorrow. And that's where I first learned the mechanics. You know, when you first start, you don't know a stock from a bond from a mutual fund. And somebody's got to just explain to you how it works. It's the same work I do with a lot of my clients today, just helping them understand the tools and techniques and how to use them. Although people are a lot more sophisticated today than they were 35 years ago when I was going through that process.
I always think, you know, that's a great story, first of all. And I also always wonder, you kind of jokingly started out like I was a boy back in the, you know, taking it clear back, but did any of these, you know, lessons that you learned in finances maybe start to get, you know, plant little seeds planted in your head, if you will, when you were at a young age? Maybe it was a grandparent, a parent. I don't know if you were like me, and I had like my savings jar, my little mason jar, my savings jar, my church jar, and my spending jar. And that was kind of how I started like understanding, you know, where I needed to put my money, and, you know, I call it my buckets, you know, but that's what my parents instilled in me. And then I did that with my young children. Do you have a memory of like anything specific from parents or grandparents?
Yeah, I've got a couple, many stories. I'll see how many of them I can work in this segment before we have to go to break. So when I was a first grader, my mother and dad bought a farm. They gave $10,000 for 120 acres out on K Highway between Galena and Abbeville. Okay. For those of you who are down in that part of the country. And they bought the old Ben Baker place, is where it was. And the first calf they bought off a guy named Willie Rice, who lived down at the far end of K Highway. He was a Black Angus calf. And they gave $45 for him. My mother then prepared a contract. And I bought that calf from my mother and dad on contract. And so every time I'd get a little bit of money, I'd have to pay them that money, and they would go to the contract and they would draw. I don't remember if they drew lines or put dollar signs or whatever. But anyway, there was a record of me paying off my calf. I named the old calf Charlie.
All right.
And we raised
Good
Charlie,
name.
and Charlie was the biggest calf on the farm. And Charlie used to jump the fence. We had a hog pen. Charlie would jump the fence into the hog pen, and he would eat out of the hog feeders. So Charlie was the fattest animal on the farm. Mm-hmm. And he was slick. And so, you know, a terrible thing happened the day came. Oh. When it was time for Charlie to go to slaughter. Mm. Now, I was probably at this point.
I don't like that grade, part of the story.
Like that. Oh. So my heart's kind of beginning to break here. So
I know. You got close to Charlie.
So I began to pray. And I begged God to help Charlie grow back his testicles so that he could be a bull on our farm instead of having to go to slaughter as a steer. And I remember that, and I kind of remember knowing that wasn't really going to happen. But, you know, when you face an impossible situation, you're supposed to bring it to God, and that's what I did.
Yeah.
Although knowing that this is one where God's not going to do that. But anyway, so yes, I mean, my first experience in business was paying off old Charlie. And Mom and Dad set me up with a contract to make that happen. So they really taught me a lot of those things, and that was formative. Another formative thing, though, that happened in my life related to just retirement at large. On my 16th, no, it wasn't my 16th birthday. It was the day after my dad's birthday. It was the 16th day of May, 1979. My grandfather, my dad's dad, died. I was there when it happened. He was on the back step of the post office in Galena, Missouri. My uncle and my girlfriend's father, the girlfriend's father happened to own the local funeral home, Sunk Funeral Homes there in Stone County. They were doing CPR on my granddad, and I'm standing there watching.
Wow.
It was a gruesome process, not very elegant to watch. But anyway, granddad died. And it was shocking for our family because he was the rock. He's the one who gave all the orders, and we all obeyed. And then one day he's not there. Mm-hmm. And I remember being very worried about Granny. And the humorous part of the story when I tell it is I remember asking my mom, what will Granny do? And she said, well, Granny will continue to live at her house.
So you were already curious about that kind of thing then.
Well, I was 15. I mean,
yeah.
I'm a big kid.
Usually 15-year-olds aren't worried about others.
Well, I was about to tell you why I was worried.
Okay.
See, I didn't let this out. But the real reason I was worried, I was afraid Granny was going to move in with us and I was going to lose my bedroom.
There you go. And there it is.
So anyway, before the day before he died, we'd had dinner at Granny and Granddad's house. It was Dad's birthday. So Granny cooked dinner for us and we'd had dinner there. And my granddad, Jake Watts, who owned a grocery store right there at the end of the Y Bridge in Galena, he had told my dad how happy he was because he had all of his children gathered around. They all lived really close. He had all of his children around him, and he had $100,000 in the bank.
Oh, boy.
Wow. And so I look back to that event as actually being the event that got me kind of pointed toward retirement planning, because it was the first time I ever had the chance to think about, so what do people do? What do wives do when they lose their husbands? How does surviving spouses handle this? And will Granny have enough? Of course, it didn't take very much for Granny in the 1970s in rural Stone County to live. She could grow a tomato and she had a few hens, and we slaughtered a steer every once in a while. Well, Charlie got to be recycled through the locker plant several times, probably. So it all worked out. But that's how I really got concerned about people having enough, and that morphed in. I had no idea in that day that was going to become foundational to my thinking. But here we are, almost 50 years later, and I'm telling that story.
That's incredible.
And when I tell it, it's just like I was there.
I
remember it.
Isn't that right? And the Charlie story reminds me of a Charlotte's Web story a little bit. You know, you didn't want to take that pig to have it slaughtered in Charlotte's Web, and you didn't want to take Charlie either. So it just, I don't know if if you've read that book before, you know that story, but
it's been a long time.
Very similar.
We might talk about this after the break, but I raised my kids on the farm.
Yeah.
And one of the great values I think that comes from growing up on the farm or raising your kids on the farm, as we did, is it puts you in touch with a rootedness and a groundedness in life.
Yes.
Because there is birth and there is death.
Yeah.
And we raise a steer and we love him and kiss him and hug him and we turn him into hamburger.
Mm-hmm.
And all of those processes, I just think that builds strength in the human. And I think a part of what we got that's wrong in America today with, I don't have the right characterizations to put on them, but, people projecting human emotions onto animals, for example. I love my dog, but he's a dog. The things that we do, I think we're off kilter. And I think it relates in some way to us being so far removed from the farm and from the realities of life and death and birth and happiness and sadness and joy.
Okay. On that note, we're going to step aside, take a quick break. This is a great conversation. I'm enjoying this, and I do want to talk about your lovely daughters and how this all wove into lessons for them, as you said, on the farm growing up. When we return here on Watts on Wealth, our number 417-200-3500. Get to know Barry Watts a little bit more. Stick around. We'll be back right after this.
Explore how Barry Watts can support your financial goals. Set up a consultation by texting VISIT to 417-200-3500.